here there are good evening to all those who have joined now. We will be quickly carrying on with our class. In the morning session, we were discussing about the classes and objects, and we will continue further with the classes and objects, and most probably we will see till inheritance in this particular session. So in the morning, we have come to a conclusion that objects are defined based on their characteristics. These characteristics will act like variables in the objects, and whatever object performs, whatever actions are pertaining to the object, those actions will be considered as functions of the object or properties of the object, or else also called as methods of the object. So functions, properties, or methods, all the three terms means the same. Similarly, characteristics, variables, and we also say them as attributes. These three mean the same. They are the class variables. Okay. So we try to identify some solution for a real world scenario. We that in the real world there are objects. We think the solution in terms of objects, but how do we exactly define the object in our programming? To define the object, we don't have any predefined data type. Okay, suppose I want to store some object 1 in the memory. Whenever I want to store some object 1 in the memory, I have to tell what type of memory should it be, right? For example, if I want to store a value 10 in the memory, I will tell the compiler that the value 10 is of type integer type. Clear? But when I want to store an object O in the memory, what should be the data type of that particular memory defined in the compiler? We don't have any predefined data types available for it. That's why to define what type of value, what type of object is going to be stored inside the computer, we'll create a class, we'll define a class. Okay, so once the class is defined, once the object data type is defined, we can declare any number of objects with regard to the data type. So basic thing is, class is a user-defined data type used for defining certain objects. So whenever we create any instance of the class, that instance of the class is called as an object. So what exactly do I mean by instance of the class? Instance of the class means in the class I will list out how many variables are there in the class, and I will mention how many properties or functions are there within that particular class. Okay, so here I have defined through the class only the data type. Now once I keep values pertaining to any of the objects, then that particular values in the memory at that particular moment of time is called as a instance. Okay, is called as an instance. So in simple terms, instance of a class is called as an object. Instance of a class is called as an object. Here this concept should be clear cut for us. Then only we can understand any programming language, any coming forth programming language. If we don't know what is a class, what is an object, then the rest of the topics is not at all possible for you to understand in a clear cut manner. So again I am telling, whenever we want to resolve or give any solution to real world problems, we'll think that problem in terms of objects. Object is anything that exists in the world and can be distinguished from others. Okay, now to distinguish it from others, we'll make use of its characteristics to differentiate. Okay, so each and every object performs some task, right? So those characteristics and the task that it performs will be defined in the classes. And for the definition that we have defined in the classes, when we assign any values to those things, those attributes and the methods, it becomes an object. For example, I am defining a class called as dogs. Now for the dogs, I am giving a color to it, I am giving the length of the hairs to it, I am giving the dog is going to bark, I am defining some functionalities, dog is going to protect the house, all those activities. So these colors, the length of the hairs, the size of the dog, all those will be as the variables. Whereas the actions that it is going to perform, the barking, this protection of the house, all those will become functions or methods. So once I define these characteristics and the methods, I can create any number of such objects. Is the point clear? What is an object and what is a class? If you have any doubt with regard to what is an object, what is a class, let me know. Because without this, I don't want you people to continue further. Thank you, Ravi Kishore. Any other member? Do you have any doubt? What is a class? What is an object? Again, I will tell you, to identify each and everything in the world, we will represent those things using objects. But to tell the compiler what is that object, what it is going to perform, how it is going to be different from others, we need to define its class. So class will become a new data type that we have defined, will become a user defined data type. And when we assign some values to the class, it becomes an object. Okay? Just like consider the civil building construction. First, they will create a map of the house. The map of the house is the class. In the map, it will clearly specify how much will be the length of the room, what will be the weight, how much will be the height of the building, everything will be mentioned. But once we try to put that particular map into reality, once we construct that particular object using that map's specification, that one building will become one object. Similar to that building, I can create any number of those type of buildings as per the map. So all those will become objects of the same class. Okay. In the class, we will not assign any values, but we will assign the values in real time to the objects. Is this point clear? What is an object and what is a class? Okay, good. So, in this particular topic that we are going to continue further in our class, we are going to discuss about what are classes, what are those member variables, also called as fields, and what are those member functions or tasks that was being performed by the objects. How do we allocate memory using constructors to those objects, and how do we initialize them to some default value? And what are objects? How do we define those objects using the classes? How do we declare those objects using the classes? So these things which we are going to discuss are called as building blocks of object-based Java programming, are called as building blocks of object-based programming language. So we are going to discuss about object-oriented features, object-oriented programming concepts. It's very simple. In case of object-oriented nature of programming, we'll consider each and everything with regard to object. Whatever we want to perform, even our logical computation will be kept in terms of objects. Whenever we are using objects, we need to tell the compiler what is the type of the object. We need to create a data type for that particular object. So we'll define a class. So in every Java program, we need to write a class and we need to create an object of that particular class. Hope it's clear for everyone, right? Now, with those objects, once they are created, can those objects be reused? If I want to reuse a particular object or reuse a particular program which has already been created, then I will be making use of a concept of object-oriented nature called as inheritance. Using this concept, we have to acquire the properties or the methods which were defined in the previously defined objects, and I'm going to acquire it into new objects. Okay, so whatever characteristics and properties were defined in the previous object, I'm going to reuse them and create a new object with that. Okay, so that will help us not just have reusability, it also helps us to replicate the real world scenarios. Like, for example, human beings. We all are human beings inheriting some qualities, some way of living with that of our parents. From our parents, we have acquired certain characteristics, certain look and feel, certain way of appearance, certain way of talking, certain way of approach. All those etiquettes have been acquired from our parents. Okay, that's why I always say to the students, always do remember, if you make any mistake, if you commit any wrongdoings, then people will say that this student would have acquired these qualities from his or her parent. You are going to do something wrong, but your parents will be blamed for it. So be cautious. You should not give any opportunity for anyone to accuse your parents. Be cautious in that. Whatever is the root cause, you need to be very clear cut that you are not going to make any mistakes, so that that mistake will point a finger to your parents. Okay, so inheritance is one of the concepts in object oriented programming, in which we'll try to acquire or inherit some of the characteristics and properties that were defined in earlier objects into our newly defined object. Okay? Now, in this inheritance, we had the acquiring concept. In data binding, what will happen is, suppose I have said that two objects are related together. Now, when they should be related together? Are they going to be related while the program was being checked for some errors, that is, while the program was being compiled, or after checking all the errors when the program was getting executed at the runtime? Should that particular two objects be related together? Okay, in simple terms, suppose I made a function call. I am using main method, and through main method I am making a call to function f. Should that function f be related to main function at the time of compilation, when the compiler was checking for errors, or should it get linked up or related when the program was getting executed at the runtime? This part is called as data binding. It may be static binding or it may be dynamic binding. So there are two types. When the first object and the second object, if they are related, or one function and another function, if they are related together or linked together at the time of compilation itself, at the time of error checking mechanism itself, then it is called as static binding. And if the two objects or two methods are linked when the program was getting executed, then that particular binding is called as dynamic binding. We'll come to know what is the actual reason for going for two types of bindings when we go for function overloading concept. Okay. Now the third concept which will come mostly is polymorphism. Polymorphism means an ability of anything to appear in one or more forms, to perform one or two activities. For example, I am faculty here in college, but am I a faculty at my home? No. At my home, I am just a member, family member. But when I am in college, I am a faculty member here. That means I am playing two roles here, one at my home and one at my college. So that means myself is, I am exhibiting two or more existence forms, right? That capacity to appear in more than one form is called as polymorphism. Okay, in plain simple English, poly means multiple, morphism means forms or states. Okay, state in which a person is going to be there. At my home, I am in the state of a family member. When I am at college, I am in the state of a faculty. But when I'm outside on the road, I am in the state of a human being. Okay, so all these are going to give you different look and feel and different functionalities. Similarly, when it comes for our programming, what is polymorphism going to be here? For example, one of the best example which we can have a look at is, we will be having a look at plus symbol. If for plus symbol I write 1 plus 2, its result will be calculated as 3. But suppose if I write a plus b and those a and b are string values, then its result will not be a value plus b value. It will be a attached with b. So it will be ab as one single string. So this plus operator, when it was there with numerical operands, it was working as one, it was demonstrating one functionality. Now when it was there with the string operands, it is demonstrating a concatenation property. There it was arithmetic, here it is now concatenation. So there are certain features which so there are certain features which will exhibit more than one particular state or action. That is called as polymorphism. Now, what are the languages that first came up with our polymorphism, inheritance, data binding concepts, and object and class concept? It was Simula. This Simula was the first language which was considered as object-oriented programming language, but nowadays it is not highly used. It is rarely used. It was at that particular age, it was good language. Now it has been overtaken by other completely known object-oriented languages. Okay. Now, similar to Java, there is one more language called as Smalltalk. Smalltalk was initially considered as a first and truly existing object-oriented language. Just like how C++ is not truly object-oriented, it is object-based language. Here also, Smalltalk and Simula, they are being still under research, whether this one is the first truly existing object-oriented language, Simula, or whether it is Smalltalk. But everyone agrees that Smalltalk was the first truly object-oriented programming language. Okay, the first language which introduced certain properties of our object-oriented nature is Simula, but which completely came up with object-oriented programming language nature is called as Smalltalk. Just like C++ is object-based and Java is object-oriented, just like that, Simula was like C++, Smalltalk was like Java. So how does a traditional programming works? What happens in traditional programming is, we'll try to analyze a problem with regard to functions. When we were talking about C++, we used to say write a function for creation of checking of random numbers, write a function to check whether a number is even number or not, write a program or write a function to check whether a number is prime number or not. So we used to think the entire logic with regard to only functions. Okay, but now these functions, the problem is, in case of functions, suppose I defined 10 functions in one program. Can I make a call to any of the functions in this particular program from another program? No, not possible, because these functions have been defined in one program, in this particular program only. Suppose there is one more program existing. Can I make a call to this function from that particular program? In procedure-oriented nature, it is not possible. If I want the functionality of this function to be executed in the second program, I have to write that particular function in the second program also. So suppose if 10 functions are defined over here, and I need those 10 functionalities in program 2 also, I need to rewrite those functionalities again in program 2. that was creating a headache for the developers. That's why what happened is, instead of creating this as a separate program developers created it as one object. Now in the second object, if you require similar type of functions, you just need to have a communication between these two objects, and you need not define those things again in the second object. First object's functions are good enough and they can be called. So that type of reusability was not there in function-oriented or procedure-oriented languages, but it is there in our object-oriented language. It is there in our object-oriented language. Okay. Second thing is, in case of our normal procedure-oriented programming, we used to declare and write the variables separately, and we used to define the functionalities separately. Okay, variables we used to first declare them, and then we used to define our functions. But those two were two separate sections. But in case of object-oriented, variables and the functionalities which are related together, which are going to act like one single part, will be combined together or encapsulated together into one single object. When I say object, I mean the variables inside that particular object as well as the functions that are being performed by the object. Okay, but if I say function 1, I mean only that particular function 1. I'm not going to talk about what other variables are going to be there. But when I say object 1, that means whatever functions are there, whatever variables are there in that object, I'm going to refer to them. That's called as high-level abstraction. That's called as high-level abstraction. So the traditional procedural languages separate the data structures or variables from that of algorithms. But when it comes for object-oriented part, they are not separated. They are well encapsulated. They are well encapsulated. So the basic unit of any object-oriented programming is what? Class. Basic unit of any object-oriented programming is class. You need to remember this thing. Okay. So whatever I have spoken about object-oriented nature, I have just kept it in this slide here also. Okay. Now, what are the benefits that I have spoken before? I have kept it in the slide here also. Like for example, with the reusability, there will be ease in development of software. There will be suppose if one task is being performed by one function present in one object. If I create two functions again, I need to make any change in one function. Should the second function be also will the second function also get changed? No, I have to go and change that particular second function also. Suppose if there are n functions that are written in the procedure-oriented manner, and something is to be changed in one of the functions, then that change should be brought into all the n number of functions which were related to that particular main function. So all that headache is there. So ease of software maintenance was not there in procedural-oriented programming. It is there in object-oriented programming. And reusability, anyway, I have spoken about that. Okay. So please go through that slide carefully. Now, what exactly is this particular class and object? Here I have kept a particular diagram for you. First thing that any class will contain is three things. Any class in Java programming will be containing three things. First one is the name of that particular class. Do remember, this class is a user-defined data type. What we are doing by creating a class, we are creating a new data type. So what is the name of the data type? That will be there, okay, for the class. So every class will have three things. First one is the name. Second one is a list of variables that are going to be there in that particular class. So these variables are the characteristics which are used for distinguishing each and every object. Okay. The values of those characteristics will say what type of object it is. For example, color of a person. If the color is fair or if the color is black, that means I'm distinguishing two different personalities here. Okay. Similarly, based on what type of activity those things are going to perform, while performing the activities, these attributes will be used. So those functionalities or behaviors or properties are the third part of your class. So every class will contain three things. First one is the name, second one is the static attributes, and third one is the dynamic behaviors. Okay. So as I said earlier, class is nothing but a blueprint or a prototype or the data type for from which objects can be created. Okay. It represents a set of properties or methods that are common to all the objects of one particular type. That's why I was saying it as a data type. Okay. So in Java, what are the various things that are required for declaring of class? Mainly in Java, we require three things to declare a class. First one is the visibility of the class. Do you want the class to be of publicly visible nature, or do you want the class to be private, or do you want it to be just visible within the package in which that particular class is kept? If you want the class to be visible only within the folders that class has been kept, has been stored, then you have to use a particular modifier which is called as default. Okay. But if you want that particular class to be visible throughout your programming, to all the other classes, that particular class should be visible and accessible, then you will call it as public. You will specify the modifier as public. Okay. So when you want to write the, you want to create a class as public, you will write the keyword as public. But if you want to create a class as that of default modifier, then you will not write a default keyword also. You will not write the default as the keyword. For public classes, you will write public as the keyword. But for default classes, you will just, you will not write anything. You will not even write the default keyword. It is by default understood that this, if nothing is written before the class name, it is a default type. Just like in C++, if we don't write anything before the class name, class definition, then it was considered as that of private nature, right? But here it is considered as default in nature. Second thing is class name. Second thing that is required in the class definition is class name. This class name should always start with a capital letter. Should always start with a capital letter. This is a mandatory thing. This is a mandatory thing that you have to follow. Then, if the class is going to acquire the properties from some other classes, then you need to mention those super classes also. You need to mention the names of the super classes with the help of a keyword called as extends. With the help of a keyword called as extends. This keyword is a reserved word. Do remember, extend is not there. Extends is there. Do concentrate on this S. It's one single word. It's extends, not extend. So the keyword that you have to write is extends. So, like other super classes, there may be some other classes which are called as interfaces. We will not call them as classes because they differ in some way from the classes. If I am using some interfaces instead of super classes, then I have to use, instead of extends keyword, I have to use implements keyword. I have to use implements as the keyword. Okay. Now, the remaining thing that should be there in the class is the definition of the class, which will start with a curly brace and end with a curly brace. Fine. Now, one small question I will keep for you. Please mention it in the chat box. You have learned C++. When you closed the definition of the class, you specified the closing curly brace, right? You specified the closing curly brace. Have you kept anything after closing brace? Was there any symbol after closing brace, any character that was there after closing brace? Absolutely. Sandeep, you are right. You are right, ma. Karthik and Bala Subbarao, you are correct. Semicolon was there. Yes, correct. Semicolon was there. And in case of our Java, that particular semicolon is not required. It is not at all there. Usually what used to happen is, as the developers were busy in writing the logic of the program, they used to forget the last ending semicolons. So it used to again create an error, and you are well aware what is this hell of a Turbo C3 compiler. We will commit one error in one line and it will give 10-15 errors. Though we committed only one error, it will list 15-20 errors. Now we will try to resolve one error from the 15 list and it will jump on to 150. And if we remove one, it will create one another for us. So it used to be a very troublesome matter for the developers. So Java says, okay, we are very simple and plain. Forget about that semicolon. It is not required. So in our Java class definition, there is no ending semicolon. Please keep it in your mind. Okay. So once these things are mentioned for the class definition, its class definition is full and done. To create objects for it, to initialize the objects, we'll be using constructors. So what does constructor does is, constructor will allocate memory to that particular object. Suppose in the class we have defined a variable called as int x. I have written int x. In C language, what used to happen is, when I write int x, the compiler used to quickly create, used to go for the RAM memory, quickly select 2 bytes of memory which was free and assign the name x to that particular memory location. And it used to give back the address of that particular memory location back to the variable x, so that they point to each other. Okay. So at the time of compilation itself, that particular memory allocation and that particular naming was done. But in Java, it is not there. It is not like that. You have written the class. Now in the class definition, you have written int x. Java compiler will not go for the RAM memory and say, give me 2 bytes of memory. No. When it is really required, it will go and allocate the memory. Okay. So when the object comes into existence, at that moment, that memory will be allocated, but not at the time of definition of the class. Fine. So who will create the object, or who will tell the compiler to go and create the memory? This constructor is the predefined function. That's why if you don't write the constructor also, by default the default constructor will be getting executed. This constructor is the one which is responsible. This is the function which is responsible for allocation of memory and for initializing of object values, variable values. Okay, so what is a field, what is a particular method? I have written that statement also. Please go through. Now coming on for types of classes, there are various types of classes that exist in Java programming. We will not just create one class, we can create multiple classes. Not just one separate class, we can declare or define one class within another class called as nested class. And we can create certain classes which will not even have a name pertaining to them. They will be just created without even name. Those are called as anonymous classes. There will be certain classes who will not even require the opening curly brace and the closing curly brace. We'll just write the statement which is there in the class. Those are called as lambda expressions. Those are called as lambda expressions. So these are various categories or various types of classes that exist in the Java programming. One is a simple class, second is a nested class, third one is an anonymous class, fourth one is lambda expression. Okay, so we will be seeing all these types one after the other, but do remember, lambda expression concept came in the 8th version of Java programming. Came in the 8th version of Java programming. Prior to Java 1.8, this particular concept, lambda expression concept, was not there. Okay, I hope it's clear for everyone now. So in simple terms, what is a class? I have tried to depict it in the diagrammatic way. As I have shown you the diagram earlier, a class, I have kept that particular class as Paul with a particular name, Paul student. And what is the name? There are two variables here. One is the name as a variable. Second is the GPA as a variable. Name I have written Paul Lee and GPA score is 3.5. Similarly, there is one more name for the class called as Peter student. And here I have written name as Peter Tan and GPA as 3.9. So what you are able to see here is this student is the class name. And before the student, before the colon, I have written the object name. I have written the object name. So this is the way, this block of representation, this block representation is called as object diagram, is called as class object diagram, wherein we'll mention what is the object and we'll mention to which class that object belongs and how many variables are there in that particular object and how many methods are there in that particular object. So this diagrammatic representation is called as class object diagram representation. You will be using it mainly when you will be studying your engineering, you will be doing your UML diagrams, unified modeling language diagram. In that one, you will be representing this particular scenario. Okay, so like this Paul as a student, I have mentioned for all those. But do remember here, I have not written any colon, and before the colon, I have not mentioned any object. That means objects of this particular class have not been created. If I want to represent any particular object, then I will mention that particular object name here. And also do note here that there are no values inside them. They are just declared as the names of the variables. But here, if you look back for the object, when you are writing, there will be certain values inside the variables. Fine. So pertaining to this, I have written some text here. Please go through what are those texts. I have already explicitly told you about those things. Now coming on for class definition, I have kept one example program here. And what this example program is going to have is, it is going to show you how to you create a class. I'm creating a class here called as circle. The name of the class is circle. You can keep any name here, A, B, C, A or B or something like that. But you need to tell the compiler that this particular circle is of type class. I'm going to perform some class definition by writing a class as a keyword. This class is a reserved word or a keyword. And I'm telling that this class should be visible publicly. That means any compiler or any program can access this particular class. Fine. So now for every class, there will be an opening brace and a closing brace. This opening brace to the closing brace is called as body of the class, is called as body of the class. So what is there in the body of the class? There are two variables. Anyway, two things will be there in the body of the class. One is member variable, second is member functions or member methods. Now here in the member variables, we have got two variables. One is radius and another is color. In the member functions or member methods, we have got get radius and get area with their own body of the functionalities, body of their methods. Okay, so this is the simplest example of creation of a class. Similarly, there is one more class getting created called as soccer player, and the syntax have been kept in the bottom part for you people. Okay, so you need to remember what is the syntax of creation of a class, and you need to understand how do we write any class like that I have shown in the examples. So now, what are the naming conventions that we need to follow in case of our class names? The first and foremost thing that we need to remember is the class name is a data type that is going to represent a particular thing, right? So any particular object, when it is being identified with a particular name, that name is a noun, is a noun phrase in English, right? So while giving the namings, you should not use A, B, C, X, Y, Z like that. That name should be somewhat meaningful and it should be noun in nature. Second thing, that name of the class should start with a capital letter, should start with a capital letter. And when we have two words in that particular naming, those two words should be attached together with the second word's initial letter getting capitalized. With the second word's initial letter getting capitalized. This is called as camel case lettering. Okay. Third thing, whenever you are giving any name to the class, it should always be a singular noun. It should always be a singular noun. For example, I'm writing circle here. I'm not writing circles. Soccer player. I'm not writing soccer players. It should be singular noun. Third one, it should be meaningful and self-descriptive in nature. So here, though I have mentioned all these conventions, naming conventions, some of them are must and should to be followed. Some of them are as a good programmer's practice to be followed. The first and foremost requirement is in Java, the first letter of the class name should be capital letter, should be a capital letter. So what are the inner classes in Java? Now we have seen a simple class, right? Within 1 or 2 minutes, the class will get winded up, our session will get finished off. So I am not going to jump on for inner classes now itself, because there are these many different types of inner classes again. So I need to be very elaborate in this regard. So if you have any doubt till this particular point, please ask it. I'm opening the chat box and waiting for your response. But immediately after this, I'm going to post another link for the second class. So be available and join the second session as soon as possible. Do you have anything to be asked for in this particular class?